Oh, I would certainly hope so. I would think most of the people in the region and the world recognize that the world would be a better place without that regime.
What do you make of the statement made by the Iraqi government that Iraq has no weapons of mass destruction and is not developing any?
They're lying. Next.
What's it like to be back? I was last here in 2010. That was my last visit to our operational base for the Information Operations Task Force, which I had set up 5 years before. Coming back now, it's a bit like revisiting old ghosts.
In 2016, one of our journalists looked through 15 million lines of purchasing information from the Pentagon. And at the top, as you'd expect, of the British clients were British Aerospace, Rolls-Royce. Third in this list was Bell Pottinger, with a mysterious $500 million contract in Iraq, which nobody had heard anything about.
The team that did Iraq was separate from everybody else. They were part of our special projects unit.
I promised myself I'm not gonna cry.
But you failed again. How are you, boss?
Oh. Asseyez-vous. Your son looks exactly like you, by the way.
You think so?
Yeah, he looks exactly like you.
So he's done well. I mean, he's now, you know, he finished
He's at
at Cambridge.
Oxford, right?
He went to Cambridge, finished there last year. Now he's gone to King's College.
Oh, wow.
What's he studying? He's doing his master's in war studies.
Oof.
Yeah, I know. I wish the apple had fallen a little further from the tree. Yeah.
No, my son, Dad, I want to go into advertising. I said, why? He said, you're in advertising. I said, yeah, but I'm an idiot.
Yeah. Trouble is with us, the work we did, it ruined us for anything else.
I know. It killed my career.
Yeah, but I mean, that's happened to so many of us.
Yeah, it killed my career.
Yeah.
And I went from the creative director into the Iraq guy. And I just wish we can continue the work. I just wish, you know, forget the money, forget
I think we'd have
everything.
made a difference again in 2013, 14, 15.
Yeah, but it's,
you know,
no sense.
Yeah.
No logic.
It became apparent that the military, the US military, were looking to run an advertising campaign. And I said to my colleague, they don't want an advertising campaign. They want a nation-building campaign. Let's start from there. And let's have a crack at it. Why not?
I heard of Bell Pottinger a few times in the next few years, but just in third or fourth hand, and not directly. And I'm one of those people that was working deeply inside that arena, and I really didn't hear much about them.
The men and women in uniform, U.S. and coalition alike, are performing superbly. Iraqi forces are capitulating by the hundreds.
I think back to why it is that there were so few questions asked at the time, and then I look at what was being printed in the New York Times. what was being printed in the Washington Post. And I would say that the mainstream, if I can use that term, the mainstream American media joined with George W. Bush in taking us to war in Iraq.
Our coalition will stay until our work is done, and then we will leave.
What we said was, we can't sell you. We can't sell the occupation. We had to persuade the Americans that what you needed was a different kind of narrative, one that could take the Iraqis on some kind of journey. We knew we would be up against all of the big agencies in the US. Madison Avenue would be there in force. And about a month later, we heard that we'd won it. And I felt a little bit like the dog that had caught the bus.
Look, I was willing to work with the devil to get my country back. There was an attack in Kuwait, 1991, said there was an assassination attempt on George Bush. So in retaliation, Clinton hit the intelligence agency in Iraq, which is our next door neighbor. I survived, my sister survived. My sister lost her eye. My nanny lost her life. My dad lost his life. My mom lost her life.
That's a massively traumatic event to happen in the United
That's being Iraqi.
I was really dead set on going to Iraq, and I wanted to do it in the space of countering the extremism on the ground, of giving the new state a chance. It was not naive at the beginning to bring in marketing expertise. Who does it better? Who's ever done it before at all? It was this sort of weird bubble, this subculture, this forward operating base, away from the real halls of power, a kind of Star Wars bar of personalities.
We started in the beginning of 2004. Our job was to do a one-off television spot. A woman, and she has like a newborn child, and the child is crying, and she hums the national anthem, the Iraqi national anthem.
The authorities to do any kind of work like this among populations, we have what we call Title 50, which is covert authorities that belongs to our intelligence agencies. And we have Title 10, which belongs to Defense Department. And usually, Title 10 has to be branded. You have to say, this is sponsored by the Department of Defense. And Title 50 does not. Well, we were in a gray area. You know, what is this? So it meant going back and looking at where authorities might lie that would allow us to do what we wound up calling unbranded.
The product needed to look and feel Iraqi. So we didn't want something that looked like it came out of Hollywood.
The way that we would leverage that, and the way Bell Pottinger leveraged it, is you could make it look like it came from someone without saying it. People might, you hope they perceived it that way. I mean, this is standard practice.
Fresh ones every month, then, to the point where we were producing 13 TVCs at 1 month.
Explain to me how 3 commercials turns into a $540 million Pentagon contract.
Very simple, really. I knew it within weeks. Once you start something like this, why would you stop it?
I think Iraqis became fairly adept at seeing stuff on their own media that was being paid for by foreigners or that was being scripted by foreigners. And they could sort of look at the product and ask themselves, whose message is this that we're looking at here?
It was mad. It was absolutely mad. I mean, we invented most of the people. We had nobody in Iraq, and we had 16 people in Iraq. And it was a very profitable business.
So now we're kind of heading into
fighting the
anti-AQ.
Al-Qaeda.
Yeah, this is the IOTF. We started moving into the realm of psychological war, to understand that this was, in fact, a psychological war. Let's kill the dog.
Yeah.
For the adversary, the center of gravity is recruitment. So what you have to do is attack its recruiting base to switch it off so that people stop joining it, so that it eventually withers on the vine. We're now getting into deeply symbolic ideas.
Yeah.
In effect, you know, almost the Iraqi subconscious.
Yeah.
The messaging just simply wasn't in line with what Iraqis needed to hear. You know, one thing you learn about any region you work in is kind of what are the cultural truths that you better not go up against. You need to learn to work with them or around them or co-opt them, because if you try to contradict them, you will fail.
We took every route to market that we could find. So, you know, obviously we would do things like soap operas.
Made a soap opera. It was an Iraqi family. There was a chap who wanted to be part of Al-Qaeda. It came from an idea I had.
Tim claims that it was his idea, the soap opera, and that he wrote some elements of it.
He wrote?
Yeah.
Most of the people in that decision-making circle were under the assumption that this was going to be right on target. You know, there was no risk as far as they were concerned. But absolutely, there's quite a bit of risk in that. I mean, there's risk you could wind up recruiting for them, for one thing.
There's no question, if you looked at the material they were producing, very nice, very pretty, probably win an award if there was an award for that sort of thing. But it wasn't having the effect on the ground. It was not having the behavior change on the ground or the attitude change on the ground. In fact, there's quite a lot of evidence to suggest it was having a diametrically opposite effect. It was counterproductive in a number of situations.
You immediately see, whoa. This is not what we thought it was. This is not what Washington thinks is happening. You know, this is a clown car.
Did we do propaganda?
Yeah.
No.
What was important at this stage was that Congress was starting to ask questions, because these were hundreds of millions of dollars. You know, this is where you start getting into the price of fighter jets and, you know, and people were saying, is it having any effect? Are we doing anything that's any good? Can we measure it? And it was Congress who actually pulled the plug because the Americans felt that they'd been ripped off.
Hundreds of millions of dollars in research that the government paid for, gone. And no one knows where any of that research went.
That's an astonishing figure.
Yes, it's a war. A good portion of that would also have been absorbed by literally the cost of doing business in Iraq.
How much bullshit really is involved in this industry?
A lot, and I can't quantify it. The problem is that 99% of what they do is based on a gut feeling. It's not a science. It's always worked for us, so let's do it that way. They weren't successful, and the situation fell apart. And Sunni-Shia divide became wider, and the number of bakery bombings went sky high. They were killing everybody that they could, and it became more a survival instinct there than it did trying to improve Iraq as a nation. So the strategic communication could not have been used effectively. And I've believe we've gone on to the next war and forgotten about the last war.
It should have been an ongoing saga. You cannot take your foot off their necks. And this is the first time it had just hit me. This was my call of duty to the country. We were set up for failure from day one. And I have some idiot. Wallah, if you give me as much money as as the Americans have given you, I would turn Iraqis into hippie. Fuck you! We were fighting a losing battle from day one. We were fighting a losing battle from day one. I swear, guys, you wouldn't know the amount of pain I have. My mission is not finished. And imagine people stealing your home, stealing your life, and my life got stolen. Advertising.